Rain lashed against the windows. Evelyn, a history enthusiast, hurried down the deserted street. She sought shelter, her eyes falling upon a dimly lit cafe. The sign creaked above, its faded lettering barely visible. The Timekeeper's Cup. Intrigued, Evelyn pushed open the heavy wooden door. The cafe was unlike any she'd seen. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls adorned with antique maps and faded photographs. The air was thick with the aroma of roasted coffee beans and something else, something indefinable and ancient. Evelyn shivered, a strange unease settling upon her. A bell chimed softly as she approached the counter. Behind it stood a barista, his face obscured by a cloud of pipe smoke. He wore a waistcoat and cravat, his attire strangely out of place. "One coffee, please," Evelyn requested, her voice barely a whisper. The barista nodded slowly, his eyes, like dark, bottomless pools, holding Evelyn's gaze for a moment too long. She took a seat at a small, secluded table, her heart pounding in her chest. The cafe, with its hushed whispers and antiquated charm, felt strangely detached from the world outside. Evelyn watched the other patrons, their faces hidden in the dim light. A woman in a long, flowing gown sipped tea, her gloved hand trembling slightly. Two men in frock coats huddled over a chessboard, their game played in complete silence. A young woman with a faraway look in her eyes sat alone, her fingers tracing patterns on the tabletop. Their attire, their mannerisms, it was as if they had stepped out of a history book. The air crackled with an unseen energy, a palpable sense of time displaced. Evelyn couldn't shake off the feeling that she had stumbled into something extraordinary, something perhaps not meant for her eyes. The bell above the door chimed again, but no one entered. Evelyn glanced at the door, then back at the empty doorway. A cold draft swept through the cafe, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. The whispers seemed to grow louder, the shadows deeper, and Evelyn felt a growing sense of dread. She looked down at her coffee, its surface reflecting her own startled face. The unease intensified, a knot of apprehension tightening in her stomach. Why had she come here? What was this place? Evelyn wished she had never sought shelter from the storm. With a deep breath, Evelyn raised the cup to her lips. The coffee, strong and bitter, sent a jolt through her. The cafe around her blurred, the whispers intensifying into a cacophony of sound. The room spun, the antique maps and faded photographs swirling around her. She gasped, dropping the cup to the floor with a crash. When she opened her eyes, the cafe had transformed. Gone were the flickering gaslights and the scent of old books. In their place, a harsh white light illuminated the room, the air thick with the smell of disinfectant and fear. Evelyn stumbled to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest. The cafe was gone, replaced by a sterile white room. A cot stood against one wall, a single chair beside it. The window was barred, the glass thick and reinforced. Evelyn rushed to the door, but it was locked, the handle cold and unyielding beneath her grasp. Panic surged through her. She was trapped, transported to this unknown place by a single sip of coffee. What had happened? Where was she? The silence of the room was deafening, broken only by the frantic beating of her own heart. Section 4, The Hollow Gaze. A sound, soft and shuffling, drew Evelyn's attention. She turned to see them, emerging from the shadows, their eyes hollow and vacant, their skin pallid and cold. They moved towards her, their footsteps silent and measured, their gazes fixed on her with an unnerving intensity. Evelyn backed away, fear constricting her throat. Their faces were etched with an ageless weariness, their expressions blank and emotionless. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were not entirely human, that something dark and ancient lurked beneath their empty stares. Their whispers surrounded her, cold and ethereal, like the breath of ghosts. Evelyn pressed herself against the wall, her mind racing. Who were these people? What did they want? Their presence was suffocating, their silence more terrifying than any scream. They closed in, their hollow eyes boring into her, their whispers washing over her like a cold, dark wave. Evelyn closed her eyes, bracing herself for the unknown. What had she stumbled into? What fate awaited her in this strange and terrifying place? Section 5, The Barista's Secret. The whispers parted, and a figure emerged from the throng. The barista, his waistcoat now pristine white, his cravat a stark black, stood before her. His eyes, once obscured by smoke, now burned with an eerie internal light. He held a silver pocket watch, its hands frozen in time. "Welcome," he rasped, his voice a dry rustling whisper, "to the Timekeeper's Cup, a place where time has no meaning and the lost souls of history wander." He smiled, a chilling, humorless expression that sent shivers down Evelyn's spine. "You see," he continued, his voice barely audible above the whispers, "this cafe is not what it seems. It exists between moments, a crossroads of past, present, and future. Those who stumble through our doors become untethered from time, their souls forever bound to this place." Evelyn stared at him, her mind reeling. The cafe, a trap, the patrons, lost souls. It was too much to comprehend. "How?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "How can this be?" The barista chuckled, a hollow, chilling sound. "The coffee," he explained, his eyes gleaming. "It is brewed with a rare and potent herb, a secret passed down through generations. One sip and you are ours, forever lost in the annals of time." Section 6. Escape from the ruins. A surge of adrenaline shot through Evelyn. She had to escape. She scanned the room, her eyes falling on a loose stone in the wall. With a desperate hope she pried it loose, the stone crumbling in her hand. Behind it, a faint light flickered. The barista turned, his eyes widening in alarm. "Stop!" he hissed, his voice sharp and commanding. But Evelyn was already scrambling through the opening, the whispers and the hollow-eyed figures closing in behind her. She tumbled through the opening, landing hard on the cobblestones. The storm had passed, the street illuminated by the pale light of dawn. Evelyn scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding, her clothes torn and dusty. She looked back at the cafe, but it was gone, replaced by a pile of rubble, the remnants of a building long since crumbled. Evelyn stumbled away, the barista's words echoing in her ears. She had escaped the timekeeper's cup, but the experience had left an indelible mark on her soul. The cafe, a chilling reminder that some doors are not meant to be opened, some secrets best left buried. Section 7. A warning unheeded. Evelyn never forgot her night at the Timekeeper's Cup. She tried to tell others of her experience, of the eerie cafe and its haunting patrons, of the barista with his chilling secret. But her words were met with skepticism, dismissed as an overactive imagination or a bad dream. They didn't believe her, they couldn't. The Timekeeper's Cup, she realized, remained hidden from those who did not seek it out. It existed in the shadows, preying on the curious, the lost, the unsuspecting souls seeking shelter from the storm. And so Evelyn carried the burden of her experience, a chilling reminder of the hidden dangers that lurked in the world. She knew that the Timekeeper's Cup was still out there waiting for its next victim, and she could only hope that her story, whispered on the wind, might serve as a warning to those who dared to venture too far into the unknown.